Hello, BookTube. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Juan. I am just one reader, your favorite Mexican booktuber who reads in English. And this is not a drill. This is not a dream. This is not like an Inception kind of simulation. This is actually happening. I am doing my first ever reading vlog. So I will be taking you with me on the adventure that will be reading James Islington's The Will of the Many. But actually, let me adjust the lighting. Let me dim the lights because this is kind of scary. Actually, I should not be wearing my glasses for this. Let me dim the lights. Hopefully that will be more human-like. I dim the lights and think about you. Spent sleepless nights to think about you. You said you loved me, or were you just being kind? Or am I losing my mind? Stephen Sondheim? No? If you know, you know. Just saying. Follies? Really? Stephen Sondheim? Anyway, so like I said, you will be joining me for the first time ever, for the first time in forever. Stop it with your singing. I will be reading The Will of the Many by James Islington. So this is a book that I only just started really, but I decided, no, wait, I need to pause my reading of this and I need to make something out of this. I need to make some content out of this. This is going to be crazy, probably. The reason that I decided to make this first ever reading vlog project with this book specifically in mind is that I think it could go it could go really well or just really badly. But it will be funny. I can assure you, it will be a lot of fun. Fun and funny, both. The Will of the Many by James Islington. Islington. You don't want to be caught dead pronouncing it Islington. No, sir. It's Islington. So, James Islington is an author that I know has written some fantasy before, not with a lot of success, not a lot of positive reviews out there for his previous work, the Lycaeus trilogy. However, The Will of the Many, which is book one in the Hierarchy trilogy, has gotten nothing but positive reviews. Like everyone, at least that I have watched on BookTube, everyone has the opinion that this book is the best thing ever. So I want to test that, and you know, I am pretty critical when it comes to my fantasy. In terms of, I am critical of things that some fantasy readers are not as critical of, like writing style, authorial voice, the sense of style, the prose, the sense of awe, the sense of wonder, all of that. But I am also, you know, I tend to like, I guess the kind of fantasy that I tend to love is not the trendy, like the on trend right now. Like if you really think of the fantasy styles that are really popular right now, like the Brandon Sandersons and all of those, I am not a fan. I am not a fan of those. So I'm not saying that this is that kind of fantasy. I'm just curious as to what kind of fantasy this is. So like I said at the beginning of the video, this vlog could go really well or really badly. Either or. So what I will be doing is I will be recording myself, updating you on my thoughts on the book, just free association style, psychoanalyst here. Just freely associating some thoughts, random opinions, probably some singing. As you can see, I tend to sing a lot. I usually think in terms of, you know, songs and music. So I will be doing that, which I guess that's what you do in a reading vlog. You just talk about the book as you go along. So I will be recording myself periodically, like every other day or so, probably. Maybe when I reach page 150 and then 300 and so on and so forth. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't have anything really planned out. I will just go ahead and do it. So I'm excited. I am actually excited about the book. I really have high hopes for it. I think it's going to be really interesting. I've heard nothing but great things. I am repeating myself. Anyway, this is going to be The Will of the Manet. Let's see what happens. Oh, I forgot to say, there will be no spoilers whatsoever throughout this entire reading vlog. So don't worry, you can watch this video without even having read the book. There will be no spoilers at all. I will not even comment on the plot or the character or like anything that's actually telling you about what the book is about. I will just, I will give you some of my ideas, opinions, thoughts, that's it. But I will not really tell you about what's going on with the story and all of that. So if you care about spoilers, fret not. You will be spared. Kill the spare. Okay, hello BookTube. It's only been a few seconds for you. However, it's been a couple of days for me since last we met, and I am ready with my first update of The Will of the Manet. The Will of the Manet by James Islington, in it, mate. He's Australian, he's not a British author. Anyway, so I am 200 pages into the book, which is a third of the way into the book. So I feel like I have some thoughts and I'm ready to express them in here. Oh, how can I say this nicely and politely and correctly so as not to hurt anyone's feelings? I am not a fan of this book. I am so disappointed and honestly so frustrated because this book has so many things to offer. It has a lot of potential. It has a lot of interesting ideas and concepts, and I think it could have been great. It could be great. It might get better. So I am not DNFing it. Although that thought has actually crossed my mind, I'm not gonna lie. Like a few times I've been reading this, I've been thinking like, oh man, do I really want to read 600 pages of this writing style? God, Jesus Christ, Jesucristo Santo. But I still think this book can become decent. That's very polite of me to say. And very generous, we'll see. But I think it all comes down to the writing. I am a very picky reader in terms of the writing styles of anything that I read, any genre, fiction, non-fiction, psychoanalysis even. I am a very critical reader in terms of writing style, and that doesn't mean to say like, oh, it's good writing or bad writing. I'm freezing. It just means like I know the kinds of writing style that I like and the ones that I don't find to my personal taste. I just immediately realize, oh, this is not the writing that I like. And that certainly has been the case so far with The Will of the Manet. Okay. So without giving anything away in terms of the plot, the story, the characters, the themes, or anything, well, I will say that the themes are actually interesting in terms of social, political, just general human condition ideas, I think are interesting. They're certainly there. But in terms of, I won't spoil anything in terms of the story itself. I do think that the book has a lot of things to offer. It has a lot of potential. However, man, the writing, it's so disappointing. I feel like James Islington is not a good storyteller. He just is not. I feel like this is very reminiscent of Brandon Sanderson. And there's a lot of people out there who love Brandon Sanderson to death, like he's the best author ever. So if you're one of those people, pick this book up, The Will of the Manet, because you will like it a lot. However, I have my quibbles with this kind of writing that feels much more centered, or exclusively, honestly, centered on the world building and the plot, but I just don't feel anything. I don't feel interest, I don't feel engaged, I am not invested in the characters. The main character is the most forgettable character ever. I don't even remember his name, honestly. So it feels so empty and so bland. I can read that there's cool stuff going on, and cool like magic systems that are going on, and there's a lot of ingredients that are there. However, if nothing makes me feel anything, especially in terms of characters, I'm just not going to enjoy the book. So I really hope that this is just the beginning of the book. I really hope that it gets better in this regard in terms of character, but also, and this is really the most important and the most disappointing letdown that I've had with the book so far, is that the writing feels very declarative, very stark, very matter of fact. Like it's giving me facts, it's giving me action, it's giving me a lot of verbs and adjectives, it's giving me sequences of events, but there's nothing that feels lively, vivid, alive in the writing. It just feels very declarative, and this is something that really bothers me. And again, this is something that I realized with Brandon Sanderson's writing as well, or Fonda Lee in the Jade City, the Green Bone Saga. Is that it? Yeah. That kind of writing feels very, very stale to me. Like it's completely factual and there's no emotion behind it. Then he will do James Islington, mate. He's Australian. He's not British. Anyway, he does something that is really getting on my nerves. Like it's becoming grating at this point, where he will like write a longer paragraph, and then immediately after that paragraph he will just write like one very simple, stark sentence, and it gives the book a certain rhythm. It feels a little like a haiku, except it's not well done, and it feels so artificial. And it feels, I don't know, for some reason I feel like this is a very artificial feeling kind of book overall. And what I mean by that is that it feels like I can see this author, James Islington, mate, again, Australian, not British. Okay, moving on. I feel like I can see James Islington, mate, in it, sitting down in front of a desk, in front of a laptop, and just like typing and making things up. I don't like that. I don't like that. I want my writing in any kind of book, in any kind of genre. I am actually freezing. To feel vivid, to feel real, to feel emotionally anchored. If that makes sense to you, hopefully it will. And I am not getting that. So, am I DNFing this now? No, I'm not. I'm sticking with it. I'm pushing through. I'm not a fan. So far, I think this book deserves like 2.5 stars, just because the writing is just not doing it for me. But I will say that there are some tropes and some elements that are starting to come into the story, so I hope that those elements pay off, and we'll see. So, not a fan. Okay, so I'm on page 300 and I'm ready for my next check-in update. Honestly, it's baffling. At this point, I find it honestly baffling and discombobulating that a book can have so much action. Like, there's a lot of action sequences, fights, battles, etc. And yet, it feels so unbelievably boring and dull. Like, honestly, this is coma-inducing. That's how boring I am finding it. There's nothing to the writing, nothing to the dialogue. The dialogue feels completely artificial and made up, and it's never happened. It never will happen. This is completely made up. And it just feels artificial again. Artificial is the way that I will describe this book probably till the very end, but that's just how I feel. Yeah, it just feels like a string of words that have been put together, and they sort of make sense coherently in terms of a sequence of events that is vaguely coherent, but it makes you feel nothing. Also, I think this is incredibly YA. It's young adult fiction. I thought this book was adult fantasy because it sort of is marketed as one. It's not. This is YA fiction for sure. Like, don't even question that. And let me give you an example of the beautiful, majestic, sophisticated, nuanced quality of the writing that we're dealing with here. So this is from page 299. Listen to this. Necessity has made me into a convincing actor over the past few years. The trick, I've decided, is to make myself believe what I'm saying is true. Isn't that just next level writing? Isn't that Shakespearean? Oh my effing god, this book. This book is gonna kill me. I'm telling you, this book is gonna be the death of me. I'm on page 400, so I am 2/3 of the way into the goddamn novel. And I am so ready to DNF it. I am only not DNFing it yet because I have this kind of sadistic yet masochistic impulse to keep going and just to see if it actually gets... It's not gonna get better. I just don't see how it could get somewhat decent. I think it's just gonna go downhill, even more downhill from here on out. So I kind of want to see the train wreck that this book is, but who knows, it might actually blow my mind by the end. It's not gonna happen. So what I was thinking is this book has so many issues. It's so uneven, but ultimately I would much rather a book be uneven and flawed, but rather than having it be what this book is, which is flat, vanilla, paint by the numbers, so tropey you cannot even believe how tropey it is. I don't care if it's tropey, it's just not doing anything interesting or new or fun or stylistically fascinating or anything with those tropes. So it's tropey, it's uninteresting. We have a setting, like a school setting, that feels very much like some other school settings from other examples of the genre. It feels very much like Hogwarts. It feels very much like the Hunger Games. It feels very much like blah, 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 so on and so forth. We have those kinds of stereotypical characters. We have your Dumbledore, your McGonagall, your Snape, kind of, your Draco Malfoy. Those are stereotypes, and those are there. Again, I'm fine with stereotypes and tropes being there. It's fine. But he's not doing anything with that. So that's what's blowing my mind, honestly, just how frustrating it is that the book feels so devoid of life. And I was thinking, this book to me, I think, is the anti-His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman. His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman is young adult fiction, like this one. They are both YA fantasy series. Even though this is kind of masquerading as adult fiction, it's not adult fiction. It's YA fantasy fiction. I don't care what Goodreads says or what marketing wants you to believe. This is YA. Of course it is YA. It just is masquerading as something grandiose and majestic that it clearly isn't. So it's like like trying on clothes that just don't fit you and you want to pretend. This book is a big pretender. So Historic Materials by Philip Pullman is also YA, it's also fantasy, but you can see the difference in terms of the fantastical elements. Historic Materials is actually magical. It feels sort of mysterious and filled with awe, and it just has that kind of weirdness and whimsy to it. I'm not saying that all fantasy needs to have that kind of whimsy. No, there are different kinds of fantasy, and I love several kinds of fantasy myself. They don't all have to be similar in that regard, but this one just doesn't feel like fantasy at all. And the magic system in here, which is the will of the Manet, the will, it's not clear what it is. Is it like the Force from Star Wars? Is it like some kind of mental energy? Is it like life itself? Is it magic? What the fuck even is it? What the fuck does it do? And how does it fucking do what it fucking does? Oh, it's so uninteresting and so vague. It's vague, it's unclear, but honestly, it's not even that interesting to begin with. And if you're gonna include it in your title, the will of the many, then it should be interesting. It should have weight. And every single time that the will comes into play, I'm just so bored and so uninterested. It's so, I'm just like, I don't even care. I don't even care what it is or how it works or what it does and how does it do what it does. I don't care. I don't care. It's not clear, but it's not interesting either. The characters are still a problem. I don't care about any single one of them. I don't know their names, their backstories. There are a couple of twists and turns and revelations where you can see that the author is like feeling very clever, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna pull the rug under your feet. Oh, you'll never see it coming. But it feels unearned. It feels unearned because you don't really care about any of these people or their stories, or because there's no emotion. There's no real character development or characterization. There's no character work. You need to feel like, look, and this is something where I think the comparison with Historic Materials is legit. A book like this should cast its spell upon the reader, whether it be with the writing or with the characters or with the world or with the magic or with the concepts or themes or something. And I think Historic Materials is a great example because it casts its spell on many different levels fairly early into the first book. Whereas this one, The Will of the Manet, just hasn't cast its spell, and I'm already on page 400. 400. Give me a fucking break. And let me tell you, the spell has not been cast. I don't think it will, honestly. This book just feels like so bland, so bland. It's food with no seasoning, no salt, no pepper. No, nothing. So yeah, I do think this is the anti-Historic Materials, just because the characters, the writing, there's no style. The magic system, like I said, there's nothing really here. So we'll see. I'm still gonna try and finish the book, even though I'm not gonna put as much effort and time and dedication to it as I was putting into it previously, just because I'm so tired. I honestly feel like I am wasting my time, wasting myself. Just look at me. Do I look like a sane person? Do I look like myself? Do I look like a happy reader? Do I look alive? No, I don't. I feel like maybe I don't look as bad as I feel, but I certainly feel bad. I feel sick to my stomach. I feel like a machine. I feel dry. When I'm reading this, I feel emotionless. I feel dead inside. I feel like this book was actually written by artificial intelligence. This feels like an AI book. It's so devoid of humanity and vitality. James Islington, mate, are you even human? Are you even? I want to start talking like that character from Ted Lasso, Jamie fucking Tar, mate. Like, what are you doing? It's no fucking sense, eh? There's no fucking sense in it. No vitality. There's no vitality in it. Oh my god. What am I gonna do? Should I continue reading? I'm gonna try. We'll see. We'll see. Okay, so I finally did it. I finally completed The Wheel of the Many. I am done. Oh, okay. I actually feel so relieved. Like I can go and finally take a nap that will restore my good taste. Oh my god, I thought this book was actually pretty... It's not the worst book ever, and it certainly has a plot. That's all I can say. In terms of positive things about this book, it has a plot, things happen, there are words in it and chapters, and it's not the worst book. I think if this is your first book of this kind that you ever read in your life, and you are maybe 14, 15, a young adult, this is a young adult book, this is a YA book. Don't be fooled, this is YA 100%. Maybe you would love this book, but guess what? I am not young anymore. I look younger than I am, I hope. But I am certainly not a YA audience anymore. But you know what? I do enjoy YA, from time to time, as long as I know that I'm getting into YA, and as long as it's written well. I love children's fiction, as long as it's done well. I love things that are well written, things that feel alive, and that's really the fatal flaw of this book. It's completely dead. It's dry, bland, emotionless. So the last 200 pages of the book were so hard to get through. It was so fucking boring, which really, really bothered me and surprised me in a negative way, of course, because so everyone says that the final portion of the book is actually the most amazing and interesting and exciting part of it, because there's a lot of action. Guess what? Action means nothing in and of itself. Like, it's like music. If you just play random notes, even though they might be well executed and, the pitches might be actually right, but if there's no interpretation, no style, no subjectivity, no emotion, no anything, then it's not music. It's just musical notes, but it's not music, Like, that's what happens, for example, when I love opera. I love singing in general, but I love opera and Broadway shows. And it's not very common with Broadway singers, because Broadway people are very, very emotional and very much into the performance aspect of it. But it certainly happens with operatic singers, that they strive so hard to be perfect, so perfect and precise, because what they have to do with their craft is so complex, and it's like a superhuman activity, singing operatic music. They some of them can be so perfect that they become so boring, and that's how this felt. Like, James Islington was trying so hard to cover a lot of requirements and tick all the boxes, like, okay, the hero should have this, and then the side characters should have this, and then the plot has to contain these elements. And sure, this is a book that has a plot. Like I said, it has a plot and things happen, especially towards the ending of the book. A lot of big things happen, like capital H happen. However, to me, it was just so... I was just rolling my eyes, because what's the point in having all of this action and some of the characters dying and having so many twists and turns and revelations and crazy things that happen in the book, and they do happen. What's the point if they are not really backed up by anything that makes you care about the characters or the world or anything? Like, there's a couple of good scenes, but that's about it. I think James Islington is not a good writer, for me at least, because it felt like artificial intelligence, like paint by the numbers. Like, hey, so you want to write some fantasy YA? Here's how. But then, like, the authorial voice, that was completely missing. The sort of spark, if you will, the spark that makes an author be an author and not a writer. I like that. I like what I just said. I'm such a narcissist. I like what I said. Yeah, this was written by a writer, not by an author. So in my previous update, I mentioned Philip Pullman. Philip Pullman, the author of so many books, including His Dark Materials, but so many others, he's an author, right? When you go for J.K. Rowling or Neil Gaiman, or I'm just mentioning some of the top of my head, Robin Hobb, you're in the presence of an author. They have a style, they have a voice, they have a spark, they have a sense of wit to them. There's cleverness, there's something that you can see the humanity and the vitality through the writing. It sort of cascades down into the writing. And here, this was not authored by someone, this was written by someone. I like that. I'm gonna start quoting myself. I'm gonna be that guy. Don't be that guy ever. But yeah, and now that I mentioned Robin Hobb, I think that's the perfect example to bring up, because Robin Hobb is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, fantasy author, and she's not perfect. She is so imperfect. Some of her books are terrible, or well, they have terrible stuff in them, and they are 3 stars for me. But there's something to Robin Hobb's beautiful, scrumptious style that you can't quite put into words, because that's the artistic part of it. That's the subjective, human, that's the sensitivity of the author. That's that you can't achieve just by sheer will or artificially. And that's how this felt like to me. It felt like artificially manufactured, good plot, but that's it. There's no magic, there's no characterization that feels interesting or unique or different or human. And then, on top of everything that I have already mentioned, at the end of the book, there's an epilogue, and the epilogue is trying to really do something. Like sort of, I don't want to spoil it, but there's a kind of twist, and it's supposed to be like a very, what kind of moment? And I really, really hated that part of the book the most, because it felt completely artificial. It felt completely unearned, and it was just, you could see that it was just there in order for the author to sort of get your attention at the very end and make sure that you buy the second book in the trilogy. And trust me, I am not buying the second book in this trilogy. I've had enough. Just with 600 pages of this, I've had enough. I don't think James Islington is a good writer. I don't think he's an author. period. I don't think he has a voice. I don't think he has anything to say. I mean, I don't require my books to make me laugh, but I do appreciate like the occasional sense of wit or cleverness. And here, I didn't find anything clever or witty or whimsical or comical, or and comedy is a part of life. I mean, just ask the great Stephen Sondheim, for example. Comedy is important, I think. I think comedy is probably the most important thing we have as humans, but that's another discussion for another day. So yeah, I think I'm probably going to start writing down my ideas on this book to make another separate review. This was just a reading vlog to sort of take you guys along with me on the journey that I was really excited about and ended up being so so tremendously disappointing. Disappointing is the word. It's not disastrous. This is not a bad book. I am giving this book probably like a 2-star rating, which is not awful. It's just so unbelievably bland and mediocre. It's just, it was a waste of time, which is the worst, because if it had been awful, at least I would have laughed, I would have mocked it, I would have felt something had it been awful, but it wasn't. It was just there. It's a book that exists. It's paper that has been wasted. It's trees that died for no reason, and time that I spent from my fucking holiday. I am one of the busiest people that I know. I am a full-time psychoanalyst, and I need people to give me a break. From time to time, I need to just take a break from my work, from my job, and just enjoy my free time reading. And this is what I spent a few days reading. Fuck you. No. Don't read this. If you're interested in what this book is marketed as, if you want to get what this book is supposed to give you, I would suggest go and watch Succession on HBO Max if you haven't. Oh, so much better. It's the different take on similar themes, but of course much better. Or if you want to read actually good fantasy with similar vibes, but just 100 times better than this pile of shit, go and read Robin Hobb's The Soldier's Son trilogy. It's a separate trilogy by hers. You don't need to have read anything else by her. You can just go in blindly and start book 1, which is Shaman's Crossing, and then Forest Mage, which is one of the best books I've ever read in my life, and then the ending, which is Renegade's Magic. One of the most interesting endings ever. And you'll get what I mean. Like, Robin Hobb is the opposite of this. Annie to the Who, thanks for joining me for this unbelievably long and probably repetitive and probably somewhat incoherent reading vlog of The Will of the Money. I will now make a separate book review for, everyone who's not watching this ridiculous vlog. But anyway, this was fun. This was fun. I mean, the experience of making a vlog and recording myself. I realize now there's a lot of things that I need to change if I ever decide to do another one, which I think I will, depending on what book I choose. But yeah, I feel like there's a couple things that I want to improve, of course, like how I'm holding the phone and the lighting and the microphone, and also just maybe try to give you more updates, but maybe not as lengthy, not as verbose, but more, more check-ins periodically. I don't know, maybe you could give me some of your insights as to the structure of the reading vlog itself. But anyway, I had a good time, just not a good book. It will be one of my most disappointing and frustrating reads of the year for sure, because it had a lot of promise and it's a pile of garbage. Well, it's not even garbage, it's just white paper. It's just plain nothingness. The Will of the Many.